Hello and welcome back to our sweet sunny days. This week we are spending a lot of time in my kitchen because I am sharing with you guys what we typically eat in a week around here. Before we dive into the recipes, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my refrigerator because I get a lot of questions about it. As you can see, it is not a typical type of refrigerator that you would see on the market today, and that is because it's not on the market today. It is from 1961, at least that's what the previous owner had written in Sharpie on the back. And it is in this color that we have deciphered after doing a lot of Googling to be canary yellow. If anyone knows that can confirm or deny that, please let me know. But we actually found this refrigerator at an estate sale for $150, and I knew it had to go in my lime green kitchen. So we bought it and brought it home with us. As we learn more about the fridge and hopefully collect a stove or a double oven as well, I will definitely share more with you guys. But in the meantime, I want to tell you guys about the first meal I have going in our home this week. So I was at one of my sister's houses this probably a couple weeks, maybe a week ago, and she had her kids eating egg tacos, and I just never even thought to make that, and it was so yummy. So I was like, I'm gonna make that for breakfast this week. So that was the first thing. It's really easy: scrambled egg, salsa, cheese, if you can do it, on corn tortillas. And then for dinner that night, we had laid out steaks. Now, I have mentioned on this channel before that we buy our beef in bulk from my sister, who is a cattle farmer. And if you are familiar with the buying beef in bulk process, you get a lot of cuts that you maybe wouldn't normally buy at the grocery store. Obviously, you can buy T-bones at the grocery store, but maybe you wouldn't because of like cost prohibitive or whatever. So you get steaks and roast and a lot of ground beef, and we just recently got a re-up on our quarter. We get a quarter every year, and we just recently got a new one, and so everyone knows that that means our freezer is full of steaks. So obviously we will celebrate by eating steaks the first week we have them back in our freezer. As for actually cooking the steaks and normally preparing them, I did it this time because I wanted to learn, but normally the whole process is done by my husband. He doesn't do anything fancy, just garlic, butter, salt, pepper, but he's gotten really, really good at making steaks in the cast iron skillet, and that has become a really fun treat for us. And so that is one of the huge benefits of having and buying beef in bulk, is that you get cuts that you maybe wouldn't normally splurge on. And so usually with steaks, we are a big meat and potatoes family. So if we're going to lay out steaks, we're just going to have some French fries. I freeze fries ahead of time and then just put them in the deep fryer, and it makes for the yummiest dinner. We never have any leftovers whenever we make steaks, and so the next night we were making a whole new meal. Now, obviously, with only 2 people, we do a lot of leftovers, but not with steaks. So I decided that something that would be simple and yummy would be ground beef tacos. Something I have learned in my cooking journey. Now, I'm pretty open about the fact that I don't consider myself an experienced chef in any way, but something that I've learned throughout learning how to cook is that if you take the simple steps, like doing the white corn tortillas instead of the flour, even though it's slightly harder, chopping up the fresh cilantro, making the guacamole with all fresh ingredients, purchasing the dairy-free sour cream, even though it's expensive and goes bad kind of quickly. Doing these things makes eating at home so much more enjoyable, which is better for one, not eating out, but two, spending quality time together as a couple in the kitchen, cooking and all those sorts of things. So that has been definitely something I am learning throughout the past probably couple months or so, is that making eating at home really enjoyable is a worthwhile endeavor. Back to the tacos. I always say that a taco is only as good as its toppings, and I firmly believe that. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about what I put in my guacamole. So for guacamole, I am a firm believer that all fresh is the move. I went through a phase of my life where I ate guacamole every day for like 6 months. So I do have a little bit of experience in this. And so I do avocados, onions, Roma tomatoes, garlic, salt, and then lime juice, and then I will do cilantro, but my husband is one of those unfortunate souls who tastes cilantro like soap, and so we are stingy with the cilantro in things that everyone wants to enjoy around this house. I wanted to quickly add that normally we would not season the meat at this stage in the game. Obviously it's fully cooked, but me and my husband both thought the other person did it, so it got totally missed, but it was totally fine. It ended up being still a very yummy meal that we could enjoy together in the evening. Unfortunately, we had a stomach bug rip through my entire family, which was a bummer. But after that, we felt like all we could really tolerate was a really, really basic chicken and rice meal. This was kind of the day after, and we were feeling a lot better, but just not 100%. But we knew protein was important. So I made something that I make a lot in our house, admittedly, which is hot honey chicken bowls over white rice. This is such an easy meal for two, especially if you are a Costco member. They have these bare chicken nuggets that are decently clean that you can make, and it just makes this meal so easy to make. I just make the chicken nuggets, and just like they call for on the package, and then a cup or so of white rice for me and my husband, and then we add in homemade ranch, hot honey, lime juice, and salt. And it is really filling, really, really easy. The meat doesn't have to be thawed, which is obviously a game changer, and it's super tasty. This meal is testament to another lesson I have learned recently in the kitchen, which is having things that you can make without having to thaw anything on hand is an absolute game changer for not eating out and just overall being able to throw together a meal quickly. This is one that because of that, we make quite a lot. Something that you wouldn't know about me just from watching this YouTube channel is that I am a true extrovert at heart. I say I am at least 95% extrovert. So what does it have to do with food? My ideal Friday is to be out and about basically all day, if possible, would be my most ideal way to spend a Friday. But if that cannot happen, I like to dive into a fancy lunch just because I think it's a really, really fun way to spend a morning or afternoon without committing yourself to a project that's going to take all night. Cough, cough, sewing projects. But anyways, this particular Friday, I decided to make Mongolian beef with stew meat. I don't fully know what stew meat is. I should probably ask my sister, but it is one of my favorite meats to cook with because it cooks just like little steak bites. And so it's really, really good in like steak fajitas, steak, anything that would take steak in little bites, you can use stew meat instead. Now, I'm sure there's some experienced chef watching this, or much more experienced cooker than me that's watching this and is like, that's not how you use it at all, but that's how I use it, and it's always been really yummy. So that is what I decided to do with this meal, because I do think it would normally call for steak, and I just decided to use stew meat instead. The recipe itself was super easy to make. You just coat the stew meat in arrowroot powder and salt and pepper, and then you make a sauce out of soy sauce, garlic, ginger, and brown sugar in the cast iron skillet, and then you cook the steak bites and pour the sauce over it, and you have your Mongolian beef done. And then you can just serve it over a bed of white rice with sesame seeds on top. Even though this started out as a fancy lunch Friday, I can definitely see this making it into our regular rotation because it was so easy and created a lot of good leftovers, which is what I look for in a regular meal for us. We knew that we wanted to make pizzas on the uni at some point over the weekend. We didn't exactly know when we wanted to do it or if we wanted to invite people over, but we knew that we wanted to have pizzas at some point over the weekend. So while the baby was asleep and I was just in the kitchen done with lunch, I figured it would be a good time to start our pizza dough. I bounce back and forth between using instant yeast and sourdough, mostly based on whether or not I was thinking ahead enough to use sourdough. And this particular time, I technically was not thinking ahead enough because I did not take the time to feed my starter. I just pulled it out of the fridge and used it, which I have done before, but you are not technically supposed to do, obviously. I am still trying to master this recipe. My starter goes between me feeding it too much flour and me feeding it too much water. So sometimes it's runny and sometimes it's not runny enough. And so that definitely affects the consistency. And so I am still getting used to or trying to perfect the sourdough pizza dough where it doesn't come out either really flaky or really sticky. I am learning more and more that kind of finesse with baking just comes with experience, and so I'm just going to keep on making pizzas and keep trying to nail the consistency and take notes every time we get it wrong or right. I was able to get my kitchen completely cleaned up from lunch while the dough was kneading. The pizza dough does need to knead for quite a while. It needs to pass the window pane test. And then once it does, I just take my bowl off the mixer, cover it with plastic wrap, and set it aside to do its bulk ferment before it goes into the fridge. We landed on making the pizzas on Sunday night, and we invited my husband's parents over for dinner to enjoy them with us. So throughout the day on Sunday, I prepped the toppings just so that I wouldn't have to do that while they were there. And I am a big pineapple belongs on pizza person. In fact, I pretty much won't eat pizza without it. I've mentioned before that I can't tolerate dairy, so that obviously means that unless I'm going to do a cheese alternative, which I do sometimes and I am going to do on this pizza, I can't do cheese on my pizza. So I have learned that if you are going to omit cheese, the key is to add a bunch of other toppings, because at the end of the day, cheese is just a flavor on a pizza. And so if you can add a lot of other flavors, it makes the cheese not being there a little less noticeable. Aside from pineapple, which I always make sure I have in one way or another, either canned or fresh, we always just do whatever we have on hand for topping. So I usually try and scrounge up an onion. This particular time I had a jalapeno in the fridge, which I thought some people might find fun. And so that is our name of the game for toppings, just kind of whatever we can make from what we have on hand already. 1 hour before we said we would eat dinner, I divided the dough. So as you can see from these clips, this particular time the dough ended up being really, really sticky, and I did overshoot the water because the last time I made it, it was really dry. So next time I will obviously not overshoot the water. After I divided the dough and got it set aside on parchment, I just cover it with a wet tea towel so that it can do its second rise. While the sourdough was doing its second rise, I cooked up the ground sausage, which was all we had to do before people arrived. And so all of that got done and we could just relax and hang out with our guests until it was time to assemble pizza. The approach that we usually take with guest pizzas is I roll out everyone's dough for them, just because that part can be kind of involved. And like I said, this time the dough was really sticky, so it was also not that easy, but I will roll out everyone's dough for them, and then everyone can assemble the pizza, their own pizza, by themselves. And so I recorded me making my pizza, which was marinara, some dairy-free mozzarella I got from Walmart, onions, pineapple, and sausage. I also tossed on some bacon as well. As people are assembling pizzas, we do a quick par bake and then shuttle them out to my husband so that he can polish them off in the uni. Thank you so much for joining me here on our Sweet Sunny Days. I'll see you guys next week.